Hello, and welcome to the Language of Mindfulness podcast. This is a podcast for people who want to have more great conversations in your life. You want to connect, you want to speak authentically, and you want to listen deeply. This is how to do it, and it's the real deal. So why should you listen to the Language of Mindfulness? Because in every episode, I'm going to give you tips and guidance I've learned in my pretty extensive career of coaching and practice from the best and brightest in the field of interpersonal communications, public speaking, meditation, group leadership, and somatic psychology. And we're going to have interviews with some amazing people about their groundbreaking work. It's my goal to give actionable and uncommon tips and advice in every episode that you can implement right away. So subscribe or follow now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you don't listen, you're going to miss some great stuff that you just won't hear anywhere else. I'm your host, Brett Hill, and welcome to the Language of Mindfulness. Hey there, I'm speaking with the ineffable Don Jones, who I haven't talked to in a million years. And it's been so fun to watch your career move through its changes. And just before we started before we started the show here, we were just going over some of the changes, which have been many and profound, that you've been through since we last met those many years ago.
Yeah.
So what? It was VB script was your thing at one time, and then from there, other things happened, right?
Yeah. I moved into PowerShell. That seemed like an obvious, choice. I was independent back then, right? So you are your business.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's the Don Jones brand, right?
Yeah, kind of. So I got the DevOps Collective going, the nonprofit that runs PowerShell Summit and PowerShell.org. And I started to kind of hit a wall with being an independent, honestly. Like I still loved what I did, but it was getting tougher and tougher to get out of bed and do it every day. And so Greg Shields and I were business partners at the time. We called Pluralsight. We knew some folks there and said, hey, what's going on your side of the world? And they said, why don't you come out and talk to us? You can meet everybody. And both of us wound up starting with the company as a full-time author. So we were content producers. But when I say I hit a wall, I hit a wall.
I just want to say that's a big deal for you because as I recall, for you, you are the most prolific writer I ever met. And I watched you at a keyboard once kind of blow smoke out of it. It was unbelievable. You're just kind of seeing the voluminous amounts of content that come out from your keyboard in a matter of moments is an impressive thing to witness. And I just recall, and I've seen some good people, but Don, you really, you hit the high bar there. So when you say you hit a wall, to me, that's not a wall.
Yeah.
That's that's a chasm.
Yeah, I did. I crashed. I actually got to a point where the idea of doing another training video just started to make me anxious.
Oh man.
So I talked to my boss. And he said, we've actually, we're growing and we actually need to start building out a leadership team around curriculum design. And so I did that. And it's kind of a semi-leadership job. I didn't have any direct reports, but I had a bunch of team members that kind of hinged on what I was doing. And so we worked really well together. I did that for a while. We started engaging in a lot of content partnerships, and I have a business background to have meaningful conversations with partners. And so we opened a VP job for content partnerships, and I took that. Then not too long ago, we've kind of rearranged our organization, and now I'm head of developer skills. So I've got a team of about 16 awesome folks, and then a much, much larger team that we engage and interact with and across the whole company. I've made the shift from individual contributor to management / leadership, not the same thing, but I've done that before, and I was young, didn't go really well. I actually wound up moving back to an IC role, which happens to a lot of people, but it finally felt like the right place and the right time. And it turned out to be absolutely the right place and the right time. It's the right company, the right people, the right reasons.
Well, right. Pluralsight has always been, in my mind, sort of the gold standard in a lot of ways for
we try.
Well, bet you were. There was developer training, and then there's Pluralsight, and it's kind of like back in the day, they were uh, when I was doing conferences and you were doing conferences, and we kind of would meet at those events occasionally, and even then they were doing really, really great work, and
Yeah.
they just continued with that, and they were always hiring great talent, and now they've expanded so much, and they went public, didn't they, just recently?
Well, went public and went non-public again.
Oh my God! So out
Yeah.
and back in again. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's been a roller coaster.
I'll bet so. Well, for those of you that may be watching or thinking of watching, I'm talking with Don Jones. This is Brett Hill with the Language of Mindfulness podcast. This is our first live stream event on LinkedIn, so I'm having a fun time with that. And Don is an incredibly prolific and well-known author, speaker, writer, technologist, and has been writing for quite a long time, about the same amount of time as I have. I think you started. Oh, I read a post you had where you said you were working with Fox Pro, and that really like lit me up and going.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that takes me back, because that's where
Yeah.
that's where my developer career got started. Which ended kind of when Fox Pro got acquired by Microsoft, and then. But I didn't know we had that intersection. That's a whole other conversation, I'm sure. And so let's talk for a little bit about, okay, so here you are, you've got Pluralsight as your day job, I guess, but
Yep.
you're also doing a lot of other kinds of things. Like I know you're writing a fiction series as well.
A couple. Yeah. So it turns out I actually have to write. I, like a shark has to keep swim. I have to write.
Yeah, it's a thing. What happens if you don't?
Yeah. I start to get anxious. I get bored. I get really grumpy. Like whatever endorphins come out of my brain come out when I'm writing.
Oh my gosh. Well, we don't want that.
Yeah. Since I'm not really in the weeds with the technology anymore. So it's tough for me to write meaningful about technology. And I'd always wanted to write fiction. So I think I've finished 8 or 9 books. I've got a couple of series, one's with a publisher, one's being, picked up by an agent. And then I'm also writing a lot of I think more general career for technologists, like still the same audience. Those are the people I know, but just trying to collect perspectives for people so that they can, maybe make better decisions for their own careers.
Right. And so you're you having done, the weeds, like you say, of technology for quite a long time. And now you're, I don't want to use the word pivot, but let's just say evolving into an area where you're looking back over your career, you're going, now how can I help others kind of starting on a similar path? Is that sort of,
and recognizing too that there's going to be a lot of people who don't want that path. And so I want to try and create a way that lots of people can share all of their experience about all of their paths, so that someone who's like, am I doing the right thing? Like they've got a bunch of different things to look at. Because I mean, none of us have the answer. But I mean, collectively, we do have a lot of answers.
Yeah, well, we have, like you say, collectively, we can reflect on our experience and say, this is what's working, this is what I'm interested in. Because I think, as a guy who's kind of more involved these days in the mindfulness end and the interpersonal relationship and communication side, that there's a great deal that can be said for what we can learn from each other by just sharing our common experience and exploring the nuance of how that's different, and also acknowledging how maybe as a human species we have some common experiences that are important, and we really ought to acknowledge and embrace those.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot that just inadvertently people get locked out of, or at least not included into. Things like, most of us work for a business, and so if you're going to play that game, it's nice to know the rules, but a lot of us actually don't know the things that motivate a business, the things that cause a business to behave the way it is. So it's like you're playing a game without the rule book. I think sharing those things, helping people understand, like, look, here are the career skills that will tend to get you moved in whatever direction you want to move. If you don't want to move into leadership, but you still need to move your career up a bit, here are some ways other people have done that. Like, just give people options. I feel that a lot of us come out of school, college in most cases, I guess, and we've just been through this life of, it's the next grade, the next grade, the next grade. It's like every single year it's a promotion to the next grade. And then you finally get out, and obviously, fresh out of school, you're not going to make a bunch of money. So you got to move your career. gain some experience, get some promotions, get some more money. But it's like we never stop. Like nobody ever told us,
Yeah.
like, when is it okay to quit? And I,
Uh-huh.
I, I refer to it as kind of being in the passenger seat of your career. We take whatever opportunities in front of us, we try to maximize that, but sliding into the driver's seat really can be interesting. Like you get to decide where you're going to go, and you get to decide when you're there, and then you can stop and get out and have a picnic,
Well, that's
right?
really important. It's really important because in that case, you're really saying, you're driving, you're deciding the destination. So work becomes a vehicle by which you express your purpose rather than work being your purpose.
Yeah, you decide what success looks like, and then you create a career that delivers that success, and it doesn't need to do any more than that. All the rest of it is yours to live.
Yeah. Now, if only there was a group that someone could join to get this kind
Yeah.
of
So
insight and information.
yeah, so that's the project I'm working on now. It's called Ampere Club, ampere.club online. And it's about amplifying. It's about taking whatever you're already doing and making it take you to where you need to go. So it's different people's perspectives. We're publishing career case studies. We're doing an online event called Amp Navigator. That's really just going to be a couple of dozen folks offering business acumen, career skills, mindfulness, things like this, all the things that we know that we see provably amplify a career no matter what direction you're trying to take it to.
So I think we're showing your landing page in sort of a
Yeah.
vertical format here, and so people can sign up here for the your email newsletter. And is this like what do they have to do to be able to gain access to the content here?
Yeah. So it's if you're okay with a monthly newsletter, it's free. And then you get an article every month. If you
Cool.
want weekly, then it's $6 a month or $60 a year through the end of the year. And that helps cover the platform costs because they're not cheap. But
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
that fee also gets you access to the virtual event, the Amp Navigator virtual event. Next year, I'm going to do one for leadership skills, whether you want to become a manager or not. Like leadership isn't just for bosses.
No
So
kidding.
it'll get you admission to that. There's a couple free ebooks. There's a 35% discount on my published book, Own Your Tech Career with Manning. I'm gonna find ways to get people to engage with each other too. Like we're just running a survey right now to find out like what works for folks. Because I've seen community do so much for people in their tech careers at the tech side of it, and I
Hmm.
feel that there's got to be a way for us to get together and just kind of just know that we're all there together and be able to ask questions and bounce ideas and where can I go on the career side of our tech careers.
No
I
kidding. I mean, that
Yeah.
is so important. It truly is, and I really appreciate you bringing focus to. I mean, you went through a lot of some important topics to kind of talk about. One of them is leadership when you're not really in a leadership role. Can you
Yep.
say more about that?
Yeah. So I really draw a distinction between supervising, managing, and leading. Supervising is making sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to do. A manager has an important function in a business, right? It's their job to figure out what needs to be done, to assemble the resources, to go beg for more resources, whatever else,
Hmm.
and kind of line everybody up. But a leader is someone who sets a vision and says, "This is where we're marching, and I want to show you where you are with us on that journey, like how you can be part of that success and how that is going to be a win for you." You don't have to be a manager to do that. It's great when
Right.
managers are also good leaders.
Yeah.
Typing
Yeah.
is great.
Exactly.
You could just be some schmuck on a team who's the one who gets everybody else kind of, I don't want to say jazzed, right? It's not cheerleading, but gets everyone else to understand this is where we're going and this is why and we can do it. Like I can see the path. I know how we get there. And that it just makes everyone else feel so much more fulfilled. A leader is a coach.
Yeah.
A leader is someone who helps you make the right career decisions for you, whether they're your boss or not. We can all do that for each other.
Yeah.
It's kind of a,
Exactly.
it's kind of I wrote 4 editions of a book called Be the Master. And it's kind of a take on that. Like it's moving from being an apprentice or a journeyman into that kind of senior in your craft role and working really hard to bring other people up behind you and to help them out. So that for
Hmm.
me is leadership.
Yeah, that's well said. I could imagine, for example, taking many of those different facets that you talked about and kind of breaking them down a little bit so that, like somebody on the team might be the person who's putting out the vision, and another person might be the person who's like keeping, herding the cats, and another person is sort of like, knocking down obstacles. And there's different kinds of leadership that people can
Yep.
take on naturally, and helping people to excel where their natural strengths are.
Yeah,
Is
it's also, there's a phenomenon that's been called out a lot, and there's a fun YouTube video about it called the first follower. And it's,
mm,
the visionary is the crazy person out there who's thinking up the amazing new
yeah,
thing.
right.
But like someone else has to see that and then show everyone else how to see it. Like, here's how
Hmm.
we make this happen together. Forget the crazy person. Like, we're going to march toward that, but here's how we do it. And you can do that from any level of an organization. And I think a lot of us have that ability. So there will be an event around that. I'm in the middle of writing an ebook called Leadership Not Just for Bosses, and so that'll be
Nice.
available to everybody who joins the club.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think it'll at least start a lot of good conversations for folks.
I should hope so. I mean, one of the things that I learned in my studies is, um, oh man, it sets me back when I think about how impactful it is to really kind of reframe the way we, and of course my thing is communications, and so when I'm in a meeting, I think I'm thinking about things differently than other people, just because I've been working on reframing the way communications work for me, so that when I'm sitting around a table, I'm tracking and thinking and monitoring a lot of stuff that, if you haven't been coached on, is kind of not in the frame. Like, one of the first things that happens for me when I walk into a meeting, and particularly when I've never been in before, is I notice who's sitting next to whom. And it's because that actually can reveal a lot about the internal structure of an organization or a group. And it's not like it has, overwhelming metaphorical meaning, but it can be very revealing.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon, for example, to see power groups kind of associated together,
Yep.
and then out groups kind of associated together, and or genders associated together, whatever you take that to be. And it can be a lot of different ways that things people sort of self-sort automatically, and those things can be very important, so that you can, and just by noticing that, is actually, it changes the way you interact with the group. And that's where my language of mindfulness piece comes in, because it's like, by being mindful, it changes your language, and
Yep.
the result of that and the resulting conversation is a better conversation, and that's the whole thesis.
Yeah, it's interesting because as conference speakers, we almost have to instinctively do that, right? You kind of have to
Exactly.
read the room.
Yep.
You got to watch the body language of the people that you're listening to, and did that joke go over? And am I making my point? Does everyone look glazed and confused? Am I not doing it well?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, if people look at presenters and speakers, whether it's large scale or small scale, and you look at the people that you admire and you're like, wow, that person is really convincing, they're doing that, and they might be doing it instinctively, but a lot of us are actually really thinking hard about it.
Yeah.
and and,
Like,
and that proves anyone can do it. Like, if you're willing to just think about how you use language and read the room a little bit, it's a skill you can learn. It's not, I don't think it's an art. I think it's something that can be taught.
well, I think it's a both and. Personally, I think there is an artfulness to it, but there's also, just like I can learn to draw, but I am never going to be an
Right.
artist, So I can learn, but then there are people who are just kind of born with this sort of instinctive sensory apparatus that just reads a room and dances with it. And I've seen speakers like that, and everybody just goes, "Oh my God, this is not just a good speaker. This is an art form," and they elevate the whole thing. So,
Yep.
but at the same time, you're absolutely right, and that these are skills that can be learned, so that you can learn to look at people and connect. And so the next level in, kind of mindful speaking is, learning to kind of invite people into your living room, which happens to be the stage, right? And
Yep.
you're just having a conversation with 500 people instead of five, and making people feel that is something that definitely can be practiced and rehearsed and learned over time,
Yeah,
and that's really important.
it's a powerful career skill. In our current Zoom obsessed like the way we all have to live right now, we forget how important face-to-face communications can really be.
Yeah,
And even how exhausting video communication can be, because we miss all those cues.
it's really
Having a
true.
meeting online, you definitely engage slightly differently. You can't do the look around the room because your eye direction makes no sense, right? There's just little things like that that you kind of tweak into yourself. But I think they massively undersell in their minds the importance of being able to just stand up and have a conversation with somebody and be taken seriously, to be concise, not rambling off, and to focus on what is important to the person you're talking to so that you can sell it to
Hmm.
them.
Hmm.
We've got a couple of sessions coming in for the virtual event, and one of them is roughly how I went from working for the Army to my dream job at Microsoft without knowing anyone on the inside. And, and that's like kind of the dream, right? How do you get your dream
Yeah.
job when you don't know anyone in that company? And a lot of it really boils down to communication skills and really just
Exactly.
presenting yourself. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge part of what I want people to see.
Yeah, in fact, there's an article on my website, languageofmindfulness.com, about how mindfulness helped me get some great jobs. And I realized after about my second or third interview, after I got pretty well rehearsed at having mindful communications, I would say, that I was sort of like really doing things in interviews that were really different than I used to do, and it was working.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just write some of those things down. But before we go on, I just want to segue and kind of remind everybody what's going on here. This is the Language of Mindfulness live stream podcast. It's our first ever podcast on LinkedIn, and I'm interviewing the amazing Don Jones here, who is a technologist from many years, a PowerShell guru, and now he's what was it, curriculum development manager,
Head of developer skills. Yeah.
head
So
of
I run
developer
the
skills
curriculum for all the software development skill space.
at Pluralsight, which
Yep.
is,
At Pluralsight.
and if you aren't familiar with Pluralsight, is a place to go to get the best of breed training, then that's the place to go to get the best of breed training.
Yep.
Because Don is in charge, and let me tell you, his stuff is awesome. If you don't believe me, go pick up one of his PowerShell books and start studying, because there's it's incredible stuff. And so Don is changing, not changing, but he's opening up a new line of business, if you will, but a new interest of his is helping people to become successful in engaging their careers, whether in technology or not, actually.
Yeah.
And that involves not only technical skills, but also the people skills, the communication skills. And so Don and I have connected again, because I've had a similar path in the sense that I didn't achieve the lofty heights that Don has done, but I've still been in technology for a lot of years, and written a couple of books. And I'm not going to go through my resume, but but I've been working in mindfulness now for some time, in coaching and communications, and so it's a natural for us to reconnect. And I actually did write an article, I think, on your page here. Whoops.
Yep. It is on Ampere Club. Yep.
Your
Brain is an
brain is an
operating system.
operating system.
Yep.
And it actually didn't start out as this, but I thought it would be fun because of the intersection of mindfulness and your work now, because I often thought about this and how the brain seems to, how operating systems seem to be modeled after the way the brain works, but I don't think anybody is thinking about that except for me, because I'm
Yep.
the weirdo in the room. But if you think about our brain functions, there's like these supervisor levels that are like the higher cognitive functions that are online when, hey, we're hanging around the campfire and we're just having a good time and we're singing and we're having rapport and all that kind of stuff is pretty higher level functions. But then, you hear a growl in the bush and suddenly all those higher level functions go offline because you've gotten a priority interrupt is fired on your system, and suddenly all of your resources are allocated to a much lower level. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean literally neurologically a lower level functional operational network that takes all your attention and rivets it on, am I about to die? And because that's kind of important, and we have millions of years of evolution around solving that important question. And the brain in a way is really designed around safety and about
Safety and
am I
survival.
safe now? And
Yep.
so things happen whenever your boss comes in and says, I don't think this is really working with this project. And, I know you put a lot of work into it, but it's just, this thing bombed, and the last iteration of the project just failed horribly. You know, you have a lot of the same neurology
Yeah,
firing
your
off as
brain
for
drops
someone
right into
void. And
low gear, and
yeah.
yep.
And suddenly, instead of your higher brain functioning going, well, okay, look, I know my boss is under stress. I know that it's been a stressful time. And once he gets through this, that we can talk about what the actual problem is, instead of going, well, you know what? You're the problem because of your crappy, which you
Yeah.
may or may not regret saying, but it's the fastest path through your neurology that is going to express, unless you've done a little work and created some resilience and the capacity to go, no, wait, I want to be in reaction here, but I'm going to take a breath and not do that. I'm going to say something different, like what's really going on, or explore the issue.
Yeah, it's funny. We have one of our company values is seek context with intention. And when we
Love
teach this to
that.
people, we tell people, okay, close your eyes
You do
and,
that.
and
Close
just
your eyes.
close your eyes
Nice.
right now and listen to what's going on in your head.
Oh,
Maybe
beautiful.
maybe you had a bad commute today, maybe the in-laws are coming, maybe your kid's birthday is coming up and you're excited about that. All that stuff that's running around in your head constantly, your internal monologue, that's your context. You can't hear anyone else's context. You don't know what's running around in their head, but there's something running around in their head and it's influencing what they're saying. So
Exactly.
before you just respond out of your own context, stop and seek context. Ask them, what's going on? Like, where are you at? Like, what's bringing this? When you say this, where's that coming from? And it's honestly the key to most, problem conflict resolution. And it really helps you understand kind of where the other person sits. And it's super hard to do. Like, it's really, really hard in the moment to haul yourself out of that reactionary pathway that you're talking about, that protective one, the one that wants you to
Yep.
survive, and say, okay,
Yep.
stop. I'm actually not under threat right here. Everyone chill out. Let me just ask a couple of questions and, see how it's an incredibly simple thing that's so hard to master, but it's
It really is.
so impactful, on how you're perceived by people in a career. So yeah, it's funny to hear that word in a different way, because that's so much a part of daily life for us at the company.
Well, as you mentioned that, this is just pure coincidence. I had a podcast on that exact thing, listening in context, I call
Yep.
it. It's got the power of listening in context, and it really is about that. It's like how to listen to other people in the context of where they're at, from the point of view of where you're at. And
Yep.
if you can, and that truly is a step in the right direction of being a much more mindful and complete. And this is straight up leadership in my book,
Yes.
because the cool thing about when you do this is it models for other people an effective way of being under stress. And that is just so immense, because people can take that with them and use it the rest of their lives. And the modeling part is a huge part of leadership. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Like, showing people these behaviors are okay, they're beneficial. Maybe they're not intuitive, maybe it's not what you've experienced before, but it works. I mean, that's how we all learn, is by experiencing things and watching other people. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge part of leadership.
We're relational beings. You don't learn anything about yourself without interaction. Our nervous
Yep.
system has to have something to interact with. And the difficulty being that the way the culture is oriented is like we tend to assign our identity to the things, to these experiences, and attach ourselves to these experiences. Like, if long as I can have these powerful experiences, or the conflict experiences, or these extreme experiences, or whatever it is you're associated with, we tend to think that's who I am.
Yeah.
And without them, you don't get a sense of yourself.
Yep.
And that means you're constantly seeking out experience in order to have a sense of your own identity.
Yep.
And at a certain point, you get enough of that experience that you have a sense of your identity that's persistent, regardless of your experience.
There's another whole aspect too that kind of really drove me to want to do something like Ampere Club, and it's
Mhm.
access. So there are so many careers in the world that are great. They pay a lot of money. They're very satisfying. Doctor, lawyer, all that. But the barriers to entry are huge.
Yeah,
You have to have a long college education in a lot of cases. Like it's not available to everyone in the world.
that's
It's not even
true.
available to everyone in our country.
Hmm.
Tech, though, technology is one of those industries that really the barriers to entry are relatively low.
Yeah,
A cheap enough laptop or even an iPad, you can learn to code. A lot of people hire software engineers and network engineers who don't have college, so you don't have to have this massive expensive education that I didn't go to college. We simply can't all afford that. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, what more could be done to reduce the barriers, to reduce the exclusions. And a lot of it for me was business acumen. Like, what is a profit
hmm,
and loss statement? What is gross margin? What are all these things that people are talking about? Like, how can you be included in those conversations in a meaningful
yeah.
way? Career skills, communications. We can all learn those, and it doesn't need to be expensive at all. We can all share that with each other, and that's what really, really does start to lower the bar and let more people into the industry. And that's a huge thing for me. Like, I want to see every single person who wants a job in our industry. I feel like it's all hands on deck for us to be competitive as a country and a nation. And the
Yeah.
more people we can get involved successfully, the better. So yeah, that's another kind of huge motivator for me.
Well, that's great. I love that the way I hear you sort of lobbying for accessibility and it's I mean, this is, me kind of reading you a little bit on the more personality or personal level. It's sort of like it feels like what's important to you in all of this with your club and your is open is helping people realize their potential through just helping people realize their potential. But there's something in you, it feels like that really matters, or something it feels like it's sort of
Yeah. I
core
mean,
dawn, like there's a core dawn thread in there
it's
that's
a
really kind of like what you were born with
it's a
somehow.
huge piece of Pluralsight's mission, which is part of what attracted me to Pluralsight. But I got out of high school. I was in high school in honors track and through about like 10th grade, and I hated it. Honestly, the idea of going to college terrified me. Um,
Hmm.
it filled me with anxiety. Like I couldn't wait for high school to be over. I didn't want to tack on 4 more years.
Yeah, I heard
The
that.
money aspect of it was just absolutely terrifying. I mean, my
Hmm.
dad was a chief in the Navy. We didn't have a lot of money. That I had to get a scholarship or bust, and just the
I see.
pressure that puts on a kid is
Hmm.
overwhelming.
Is immense, right?
And
Hmm.
so junior year, I decided I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to go. I signed up for Votech instead, and I did electronics and computer repair, and said, you know what, I want to be skilled enough to get a job.
Hmm.
And the Naval Aviation Depot in Norfolk, Virginia, which is where I went to school, came around and was recruiting for an apprenticeship program. So this is civilians, so it's an apprentice, not enlisted, 4-year program. And I said, you know what, I want to do that. They offer great electronics jobs. Doesn't Civil service doesn't pay top dollar, but you know what, it's steady.
Yeah.
Um, Wound up actually falling in love with being an aircraft mechanic
Well,
instead. So
there you
that's what I
go.
did. But my first move into leadership, into a management position, was the guy I worked for rolling the dice on me and offering me advice and being willing to put up with me not being great at it at first. And it just seems like all along the way, I've had so many people say, you know what, let's give it a shot. That
Hmm.
I kind of want everyone to have at least a piece of that experience,
I
because I think
see.
most of the time, most people, if they get a shot and they're serious about it, then they're going to make the best use of that. And so,
Yeah.
if we can do things, help you understand business, help you understand these soft skills like communications, help you understand your people skills, help you understand how to steer your career, then when that opportunity does come, you're going to be able to grab it by the throat and own it. And that's what
Hmm.
I want to see people do, without
Hmm.
having to incur $100,000 in student debt just to go
Yeah,
get an entry level
exactly.
job anyway, right?
Yeah, precise. I mean, these days, I mean, things are quite a bit different. Back in the day, if you could run a computer, you could get a job.
Yeah,
But now that, I mean, I look at the entry level requirements for some of these like 5 years of experience, and I'm going, what?
yeah, it's
Wait,
crazy.
this at entry
Yeah,
level.
exactly. exactly. I've seen job descriptions literally for jobs. We want someone with 10 years of experience in a technology that has not been around for 5 years.
There's something really seriously
That's not
broken here.
possible. You know, we want someone with 20 years of experience in Azure.
Yeah,
How?
wait, what? Right. Wait, I remember the first Azure thing, and then when
Right.
I think
Almost 20 years ago. So yeah. So yeah, it's kind of all about that. And I think that there's just so much with how understanding how people read you when you walk into a room so that you can choose to be read in the way you want to be, whether
Oh my God, you're blowing
it's
my
good or
mind.
bad.
That's what I call an advanced skill, because most people have not invested or had the opportunity or even thought about that question of, um, do, am I coming across the way I wish to, and what is possible for me to do different, or do I even need to do something? Let me just tell you a quick story. The One of the trainings I had where I was doing some group leadership stuff, and I was and we walked around the room after we got to know each other pretty well, and on your back you put a piece of paper, and everyone just wrote like one or two words about what they thought about you. My impression of Brett is blah, 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 blah. And so there's about 20 people. And so you get 20 relatively, I mean, this isn't like these people weren't my best friends, nor they're my worst enemies, and I'm probably never going to see them again. So there's a low risk here. So people can be fairly honest, right? And so you take this thing off and you get a pretty good reason, I'm going to call it reasonably objective sampling of how you're coming across to people. And the mission was, if 15 of those people are telling you like you're a jerk, then that's a clue about how you're coming across.
Yeah.
Now, in a popular culture, it's very common these days for a lot of people, well, I'm not responsible for how other people feel. How you react is up to you. And it's true to a certain degree. But if most of those people are telling you that the way you're coming across is irritating, that's probably not them. That's
Yeah.
and then taking ownership of your impact is what I call owning your impact. And it's, again, you're not trying to control necessarily how other people react to you, but you're trying to present yourself in a way that aligns with how you wish to be seen and known.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a really good example I'll tell people that I think helps them think a little differently. And it's, I had a friend, and we used to go to conferences a good bit, and people would always perceive him as very stuck up, very, very offish, standoffish, off-putting. And I would tell him, I'm like, no, he's terminally shy.
Yeah.
He is incredibly shy. Like, being in amongst this many people is a physical effort that is killing him right now. And they're like, oh, well, he just comes across as a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, like, you don't mean for that. Like, you don't want to come across as a jerk. And it doesn't mean that you all of a sudden have to be an extrovert, but stand a little different, make eye contact, as painful as it, and difficult as honestly it is.
Yep.
Just a few little things. And people are like, no, he seems like really socially awkward or shy. I'm like, huge improvement. That's where,
yeah, that's huge, right?
It's just that type of thing that,
really
now
is.
people, instead of being kind of offended by a jerk, are a little sympathetic to an introvert who's out of his water. And now you can start to achieve the type of outcomes you want. Somebody might be willing to step to the edge of the crowd and have a conversation with you because you've opened the door for them to be more empathetic with you.
Right. And
empathetic. And that's all you're doing a lot of times.
Yeah. And empathetic in an appropriate way, in the sense that people only have the information that they have to work with, and the brain is very good at filling in the information that it thinks it needs to create a consistent explanation for your experience of somebody. So if you don't have any information for somebody who's like, let's say you're sitting in a meeting room and there's 10 people at the meeting and one person just consistently never says anything, your brain will invent a reason.
Yep.
And for it, whether it's true or not.
Yep.
You'll say, well, he's stuck up.
We tell ourselves stories like, the ancient mythologies. We tell ourselves stories to explain the world around us. And it goes down to the individual person level, and you can't stop your brain from doing it. It's designed
it likes
to seek out explanations.
Yeah, it's a consistency machine.
You can kind of control your narrative a little bit that way. And it doesn't mean It doesn't mean you don't have to be authentically yourself. It doesn't mean you have to code switch. It doesn't mean any of that. But it does mean that if you want to be seen as a confident person, even if you're not confident, there's a way to project that. If you want to be seen as someone who needs to be in the conversation, there's a way to project that. And it can be really, really effective. It is a little, I mean, maybe it's a little advanced, but it's really just, it's getting introspective. The person who kind of started talking to me about that turned it around a bit and said, when you sit down in a room with new people, think about everything you do, think about everything that goes through your head, and think about, how they're sitting and all that. Like, pay attention to that monologue that's going on inside of your head about them. They're doing the same thing to you.
That's exactly
Like,
right.
oh, okay. No, I get that now. Yeah, of course they are.
Yeah, I think my aha moment was again in one of these groups, and when I realized that my one of the things that I like to do is help people think about how you do what I call do yourself in group. How do you show up in a group? Because it's really different usually than the way you do one-on-one, but there's sort of this group persona. And if you haven't thought about it, you will have some kind of a routine or ritual way that you go about. Okay, I'm in a group, and for me it was be in the group 2/3 of the way through, don't say anything for 2/3 of the way through, but show up heavy in the last third, and then leave, and I'm never seeing anybody again, and I don't care so much, but because but I always wanted to
It's
keep the
funny.
lay of
It's
the
funny you say
land
that,
first.
because it. I used to do some smaller events just at my house. We had DSC camp and DevOps camp, and the folks who attended that have definitely seen me in a more relaxed. Like, it's my house. I feel very like my
Mhm.
turf. I feel very comfortable. It's a small number of people. 15 people. Versus watch me walk into like a reception at a conference with 1,000 people. My posture is totally different.
Yeah.
I scan the room differently.
I'll bet.
I tend to move because I don't like getting locked down in one space. That creates a lot of anxiety in my head. So it is an extremely deliberate thing.
Yeah.
My husband Chris, his family was in politics, and so they like, the whole family just knows all these tricks. They're born with all these tricks.
Right, they live that
And
stuff.
so he coached me through a ton of that. And
Oh,
that's the type of
amazing.
stuff I enjoy sharing with other people. It's like, I'm kind of nervous about public speaking. Actually, you're not. I'll tell you what's going on in your head, and then we can
Yeah,
work around it once you know what the actual, what the real
beautiful.
hurdle here is.
What I learned is that if I how I introduce so I learned I need to let people know more about who I am up front. Because what was happening is we'd go around and say, well, what do you do? I said, well, at the time I was working at Microsoft. I said, well, I work at Microsoft. I'm a technical evangelist. And so boom, geek label right on my chest. And here I am, this kind of, empathetic, sort of intuitive character. And I can't shake this technologist, and I'm a technologist, but I can't shake the geek label. Like, oh, he won't have any feelings, and he won't have any input around that, and blah blah blah. And so I learned, don't lead with that,
Right.
because I'll never shake that label.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That was a
remember
big awakening for me.
I
So
remember when we first moved to Las Vegas, we decided to start doing some stuff that was more local, nothing to do with tech. And part of it is like, explaining what I do to people who aren't in tech is really hard. Like you teach what? Like Outlook? Like, no, that's not at all. So
right.
people say, "What do you do?" And what do you do in Vegas? Oh, we write food articles, dining out columns for magazines. Okay. They can wrap their head
Got
around
it.
that.
Got
That's
it.
one
Right.
percent of my life, but you can
Right.
understand it.
Oh,
Now we can
I,
have a fun
I write
conversation about that.
fantasy. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, just to remind people, I'm speaking with Don Jones, who is I forgot to say it again. What's the title?
Head of developer skills. Yeah, I believe it's a
Head
new
of
title for me
Developer
too.
Skills at Pluralsight, which is an amazing company that produces fabulous training for IT and dev. And you guys do some soft skills too these days, right?
Yeah, we do everything now. There's a big soft skills inventory. There's a series we have called executive briefings, which I can't recommend enough. Like, you have to search executive briefing and then they'll all come up, but they're all like 20, 30 minutes and they're high level. And if like all you want to do is keep up with what's kind of happening all over, you watch
Mm.
one every other week or something like that. And it's
Oh,
a
I
great
see.
way to just
Nice.
keep up.
Nice. And Don has also got his club for helping people learn how to be successful in their careers, with focus, especially because of Don's history on technical careers, but also broader than that as well. And the
I
name of
really
that,
enjoy it.
And the name of that is
Ampere.club. So just punch that into your AMPERE.club. Punch that into your web browser and it should get you there.
Perfect. Well, I have had just so much fun talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. It's been awesome to see you again after so long.
Yeah, it is. And congratulations on your new venture. And I'm looking forward to doing a session at your event coming up.
Yeah.
And well, let's talk soon. Everybody check it out. And thank you for showing up. This is the Language of Mindfulness podcast. Take care. So that's a wrap on today's edition of the Language of Mindfulness podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it. If so, please leave us a review on iTunes and follow along on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. We'd really appreciate it. And check us out at languageofmindfulness.com, where you can sign up for a free coaching session or download our PDF on 8 ways to be more mindful in a virtual meeting at languageofmindfulness.com/8 ways. Thanks a ton, and we're looking forward to a lot of great new content coming up as well. Have a great one and stay present. Thanks.